Welcome back, guys. We have an epic guest for you today. We watched Sydney race at the World Champs in Chicago. And shortly after that, we went and followed her just to find out she's not only an athlete, but she's also a nutrition coach. So we reckon this episode promises to be absolutely awesome. We're full of information. Sydney competed in the first season of the adaptive category, a growing category in the sport of Hyrox at the moment. Living with cerebral palsy, she shares her training and competition highlights on social media and inspires people who may not think they fit the mold to do it anyway, because you never know how far it could take you. Wise words, and we can't wait to get into this episode. So, thank you so much for joining us, Sydney, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really good. I think ever since watching the race in Chicago, we were like, we need to find out more about you and speak to you. Before I dive into that race and Hyrox and the World Champs, we have been following you, and we saw that you just did your first muscle up, which I think you've been on a bit of a journey with. And anyone listening, I mean, I think many of us aspire to being able to do a muscle up. I am one of those people. I cannot do a muscle up. So could you just like give us an insight into that journey and what it's been like, and how you like how you've built up to be able to get that incredible strength. It was strict, by the way. Saw the video.
And on
Strict
rings, ring
Yeah.
and
muscle
on
up.
rings. So we're giving you all the credit. How did it feel? How's the journey been? Give us an insight.
Yeah, somebody posted like a meme or something that was like a strict ring muscle up is more impressive than a 200-pound snatch. And I was like, ooh, I'm gonna save that one for later, just
Yes.
to the fire. But it's interesting because I have CP and it affects my lower body on both sides. So CP can present very differently. You might have an athlete in a wheelchair, you might have an ambulatory athlete, aka a standing athlete, who's just affected on one side. Me, I'm affected basically both legs from the waist down. So essentially, anything kipping is harder for me. It's essentially just like I'm just kipping from the shoulders, which is how you want to kip. But I'm essentially just doing a strict movement with a kip mixed in. So I kind of knew that it was going to be challenging to create room for that transition over the top of the rings because of my spasticity or my tightness in my hips. Um, but I refuse to give up. And I think that's just a good segue into like what it means to be an adaptive athlete. Like we move differently, things look different, but that like relentless pursuit of just trying things and never giving up, like really created the opportunity for me to be able to get that movement because, and of course there are good and bad days where I'm like, oh, this is never going to happen. And I had many frustrating moments where I kind of like, was pouty and like left the gym with a bad attitude. But I think at the end of the day, like I always knew it would be a possibility because I just don't quit on things no matter how long it takes. And so I started CrossFit in 2017, built my strict capacity. 2019 is kind of when I would like hop up and started trying. So I would say it's been like a 5 or 6 year journey. Um, and I've gone through various gymnastics cycles, specifically targeting the ring muscle up. And then this past December of 2024, I bought another program and was like, I'm going to give it another shot because it's also just one of those things where there are many people who can keep showing up to class, just do the normal 1 hour, and they're just going to get the movement just from coming and showing up. But I knew that it was going to take some targeted and focused practice for me outside of class for me to get it. Just things just take longer. Um, and we had a workout that day. It was in January. I got my first one. So it was, yeah, it's been like a 5 or 6 year journey of getting it. And we had a workout before, and then there were 4 minutes within the workout to get as many ring muscle ups as you could. And I was kind of feeling like pretty warm, and I had done the ski erg, which kind of opens my hips a little bit more. And then some light goblet squats for about 6 or 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, I'm feeling kind of good. Like maybe it's possible today. And then I hopped up there, and lo and behold, like 11 seconds of like that transition being stuck kind of at the top, I finally like wiggled my way out and pressed out, and everybody cheered. My husband was coaching, so I got a big hug from the coach. It was just awesome. And it was like even more rewarding to get it in class rather than like alone in open gym, just because you have that camaraderie and you have people around you that know the struggle and know like how long you've been working on it. So it was just like one of those tearful, joyful moments. So yeah, that's it in a
Yeah.
nutshell, basically.
It's so cool though. And I think like even you just describing it there, like you almost want to be there to watch you do it. And I think everyone at the class was probably like buzzing because whenever you see anyone achieve something when they've worked so hard for it, you share like the grit and the like, yeah, the commitment that they had to that goal. And I think you just saying that and then the process, a lot of people say trust the process, be consistent, be patient. And that's exactly what you've done, isn't it? I mean, like 5 years, you've trusted, you've been patient, you've had those days, but you've still come back. And finally, it must have been so sweet to achieve it after all those times of just getting frustrated and working so hard.
Yeah, yeah, definitely for sure. And I've only gotten back up there once since
Yeah.
trying. But it is one of those things where I just accept that again, it's not a perfect, it's a great metaphor for life, right? Like not everything is linear. And so we
Hmm.
just need to accept the bumps in the road and know that we have it and we just have to like keep at it and not give up. And yeah, I'll get back up there again, but no, it's a good moment for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like you're like saying like a kind of a relentless pursuit of it, and like that's a great message, like just keeping going. How do you feel like your like mental strength kind of impacts your training and your racing, like whether it's in CrossFit or in Hyrox? Like do you feel like you kind of have an edge like on the mental side of things, like just because of everything you've been through?
Yeah, I definitely think so, just because, yeah, it's all going to look a little bit different. I've had to be really creative in a world that's not necessarily at surface value, like a designed for me. And so I've had to, work around, just the world and how the world works and figure out how to access fitness in different ways and just be more creative with my movement. So I think that in and of itself, like just creates a little bit of a mental edge. And don't get me wrong, like there are days where I show up to, like yesterday we had a max deadlift day where it was like, everybody's PRing and I am not really, I haven't PR'd any of my lifts since maybe 2022. But I know that my body is still showing up and like my ability to lift like let's say 95% for reps, like I can do that, but I'm not necessarily going to be PRing at the end of every phase. And so just to recognize and like take those, put my blinders on and just say, okay, this is my journey and this is what this looks like, despite the fact that what's written on the board is like today we want to get as many PRs across the membership as possible. Like I don't leave anymore. Like I used to leave a little bit frustrated, but I've just learned that okay, this is how my body moves. Like just because something is written a certain way doesn't mean that that's necessarily best for me. So, um, always knowing that, and I think there are people who can just lose sight of the bigger picture of fitness and just get frustrated, more quickly. And I think, and it's taken me a lot of patience. Like, don't get me wrong, there have been a lot of days, and I think sometimes too, within the adaptive community, there can be a lot of comparison and sometimes a lot of negativity. So you have to find ways to not compare. And I know it's the same in any division. Like people, compare themselves to others or where others are. And that's not just an adaptive thing.
Mm.
But I think it's created a lot of strength for me, just not only within the gym, but outside of the gym too, because I don't let things get to me as much, like in my job or, if I'm going through a rough patch with my nutrition business and getting clients, like I just know how to like regulate my emotions a little bit better now. And I think in the gym, we are creating resilient minds as a product of the training that we're doing. And so we're able to put things into perspective a little bit better.
Yeah, it's so true. And do you think like you've just like matured into that through experiences and it's
Yeah,
just you've
it's taken me a long time. I stepped away from competing in CrossFit because it was creating it made me more negative. It made
Mm.
me not mean, but I would say I got caught up in because my category particularly the neuro category, is very broad in terms of the disabilities that encompass what makes up neuro. And so I think I always kind of was like, well, I'm at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of degree of impairment. And instead of letting that empower me, I let it like
Overwhelm you.
destroy me, and almost not destroy me, that's maybe a little bit dramatic, but it consumed me. And I was like, well, I'm never, no amount of fitness is going to bridge the gap in my physical abilities in certain things. And so how the heck do I compete? Like, how do I do this? And so I took a step back to really just kind of make sure that I was remembering why I started doing this in the first place, which is to be reminded of all the things that I can do. And now and Hyrox was great because it was kind of that moment of like, I want to try this new thing. I want to step back into the ring, so to speak. And so, like, that was the perfect opportunity to kind of test my mental growth. And I think I did a pretty good job.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, do you mind just explaining a little bit, maybe what would be the variety in the neuro category that you've touched? Is it the same CrossFit and Hyrox? That's the bracket, both the
Yeah,
same, or
so
it's different?
to be honest with you, I didn't get fully into the adaptive rule book for CrossFit. I just was like, and that was intentional. I was like, I'm just going to sign up, see where this takes me. I'm not going to dive too much into it or get too caught up in the politics of it. But essentially, yes, they have a major neuro and a major, or sorry, minor neuro and major neuro. And then I think CrossFit has a middle one that's moderate. And so it's, and I've been out of CrossFit for a little bit, so I'm not fully up to speed on how they're doing it now. But it could be anything from, um, like you are a stroke survivor or you have multiple sclerosis, CP. I've seen people who've had brain tumors, had to learn how to walk again. Um, so it's a very broad category. So they just do their best. And with Hyrox, it was all self-selection. There was no, my understanding is there was no verification process of yes, you classified yourself as major, you are major versus oh, you classified yourself as major, maybe you are actually minor. So, and I think that's just a product of it just being new and they didn't have a lot of time. And so I know that there's definitely room for improvement on the classification side. But I think that's kind of a broad explanation of it that could hopefully kind of clears up what that kind of means. It's still
No.
confusing even for me, and I'm in it. So
Yeah, no, that was a great explanation. I think it's interesting, and there is for people that like aren't aware, or like maybe don't have someone either training at their gym like an adaptive athlete, or a partner or a friend. Like, it can be quite overwhelming to understand like the different categories, and for you yourself as well, I imagine. So it's good to, I guess, know that it must be hard for you when it's not like a, I guess, totally fair playing field, because you're not competing against someone. No one's exactly the same, like, and no one's in the same situation. So I guess it must be tricky mentally going into a race when you're not sure,
yeah. And I
like
think
what. Yeah.
you're right, and it was for a long time, and I think that's really what I'm trying to let go of because I can't control that at the end of the day. And this has taken me a long time and I wasn't good at this at first. And I think it's really important to just give myself a lot of grace because I am hard on myself about how I did act and like how hard that was. But the fact that I was able to grow and change, I think that says more about kind of how I'm willing to move forward and still participate despite a little bit of unfairness. And I think showing up to Hyrox, and I didn't even join the WhatsApp group because I didn't want to complain about standards or do any of that or get caught up in. I didn't even know who was in my division because they didn't really have a leaderboard for us. So I literally just showed up and just did it. And I think that was the perfect opportunity for me to do it despite like knowing from experience that it's a little bit unfair and my husband knowing it too, and for me to be able to prove that I was able to find the joy again. I think
I think that's huge. I think it speaks volumes, like, and I think it's very like brave. I respect you for doing that, and I think like it's a good message to everyone as well, to like, I guess, not compare yourself to anyone else, and just like do it for you, and like do your own race and focus on yourself, and like, and go for the joy and for the fun as well. Like it's a competition, but you also have to want to do it and be happy doing it, and get something from it for you personally. Like,
Yeah,
very,
exactly.
important message. What about the running side? Because CrossFit is, well, CrossFitters are known to not like doing any running at all. How do you find that part of the race? Because it must be very different to have the 8 kilometers 1K splits in it. What's that
Yeah,
like?
so this was the one reason I was hesitant at first and questioned whether I belonged in Hyrox, because I can't run. Like, I could run if a bear was chasing me and my life was dependent on it, but just in terms of like, my gait and my hip spasticity, I'm a huge fall risk. We had a running event at the Adaptive CrossFit Games a couple of years ago that was running in a weighted vest on concrete up and downhill. And every single lap I fell. I was bloody. Like my legs were just bleeding by the end of it. So it's just not the best movement for me. Can I do it? Yes, but I shouldn't do it because it's going to cause more damage than it is good. And so I bike. I use toe clips so my feet stay on the pedals. And then I can do the ski, I can do the row. So there's plenty of opportunities for me to gain cardiovascular endurance without running that are just much safer for me and like the longevity of my life. And that's another thing that I have to keep into perspective. Like, just because I can do something doesn't mean that I should be doing it. And with Hyrox being the concrete floor on the runs, that was also a factor that I had to consider. So, my division had a 350-meter run, which isn't a lot on paper relative to the full distance, but it's still a lot to ask of my body. So in the first couple of rounds, I definitely tried to run the straights a little bit and then walk the corners. But just as my spasticity, which is basically, when I say that, I just mean like, imagine you have like a huge knot in like your leg, like a muscle. It basically feels like that, like in my hips and like legs. And so as I get tired from doing the other stations, I had no choice but to walk, even if I wanted to run. So I think that's always been tough for me because I have such a good engine, but I can't run. So it's like, oh shoot, like, but I think that was also just a good test of like, I want to show up and do this thing, even though I know it's not perfect and I can't necessarily showcase fitness to the full capacity that I want to. But how can I handle that adversity, like mentally, when I see people running by me? Like, how do I react? I just stay cool because this is what I have to do. And I think it's important for us as adaptive athletes to just continue to show up, even if we can't do it as written, because we're showing the world, like, hey, like, I have CP. I'm a standing athlete. I don't use a wheelchair, but this is how I have to do this station. And that's just, and I think I struggled because I was like, well, am I going to seem less fit because I got this invitation to Worlds, but I'm walking? Like, that seems kind of embarrassing. But I just kind of let it go because like I can flex on the other, everybody said afterwards, they're like, you made an awesome time for having to walk. And I think that's important to just for me to remember.
Yeah, I don't think you could ever say it was embarrassing. I think it's like some of the most inspiring racing we've watched, and like we went and cheered for Katie, didn't we, who we'd had on the podcast, and like she ran an extra lap, which was mental, and got frustrated with herself. But like I think like we watched you do the burpees, and I was just like, wow, you were flying through the burpees, and I think it almost looked like you you probably had a bit more to give on the exercises because of the runs, and you could definitely tell that once you got in, you just locked in.
Yeah.
There was something about you when you came in. We were both like, she is just like in the zone. You just came in, you locked in, and then that was you on the exercises. You could just see it, couldn't you? And we were like, oh, we need to get her on the podcast because she's just.
Oh.
And we didn't realize you did CrossFit and everything then. And then we started to follow your journey, and we were like, oh, this is why. Like, Yeah, it's the you just
Yeah.
change. You've got to change stuff to suit you when like a race doesn't work. Like, I mean, it's not the same, but I went in with a bit of an injury, so I couldn't really run the runs how I wanted to. So we just changed our game plan and we were like, we'll go steady on the runs and we'll just hit the exercises. And
Yeah.
it's about making it work for you, and it's just exactly what you're saying, and controlling what you can control, which I think is is the thing that gives you the buzz at the end, because you've done everything you can, whether it's in training, to control training, or whether it's in a race, or whether it's just in life, controlling what you can. As long as you do what you can, there's everything else is out of your control, isn't it? So
Right, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that ability to kind of put my head down and just I love the grunt work.
yeah, yeah,
And
can
I
tell.
I love the burpees for that reason too, because like, I mean, they're awful, but I think
Mm,
just being in that sucky spot for that long, it's just like, oh yeah, like I can make up some ground here just because I can embrace that feeling rather than freaking out about it. I definitely need more sled pulling in my future.
yeah.
That's a little bit of a weakness that I'm excited to incorporate more into my CrossFit training in different ways. But yeah, I was happy to be on the stations when I got to them and kind of like, yeah, like you said, just kind of lock in and do the work.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
seem to have the ability to suffer. You know, like some people do and some people don't. And it was just like, oh, she's just like ready to suffer. Like,
Yep,
and it you can see it, and some athletes have it and some athletes don't have it. And it's you can just tell the ones that do, can't you? And Hyrox
Yeah.
is the suffer fest. It's,
it
you
sure
know,
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. So how did you find the whole, where did you qualify for Worlds? Like, where did your Hyrox journey start? What
Yeah,
was your,
so as soon as they announced adaptive divisions, I was super excited about it. I reached out to a couple of other adaptive athletes and we were all like, oh, it's like a Hyrox takeover for adaptive athletes. Like, this is awesome. And some of us had our reservations specifically around the run, especially for the neuro group and the lower group. So like the above knees amputees like have to run the full 1,000, which is a lot to ask of them.
mm,
And so I was like, you know what? We're just gonna, again, like I've said throughout the entire podcast, we're gonna show up and try it despite it, you know, I know it's imperfect, but we got to start somewhere. So I decided to do Miami because it was the closest one to
yeah,
me. Well, I guess aside from New York, but I knew that one was gonna be outside, and I wasn't sure of the timing relative to the world's
yeah,
qualifications, and we didn't have a lot of info, so I decided to do Miami. I ended up, Miami was great. And one of the things I will say, just like being able to be in the open division with all the other women, I think was super empowering for me. Like, I've worked out alongside adaptive athletes, and don't get me wrong, like, that's awesome in a different way to be representing the adaptive divisions. But I think there's something even more powerful, like just being with all of the other women, because it's like, oh, yeah, I'm doing everything that they're doing. And just the amount of like high fives and fist pumps I got from like all the women like passing by me, and just like the encouragement was really awesome. And I think that's what like made me a little bit hungry for more, was just like the community vibe while you're doing the thing. Like, it's not very often
yeah,
like we're just in the midst of it and like able to find little moments to like cheer for each other. And I think that's just a byproduct of like being mixed in with all of the open women, and that was a really positive experience for me. As I understand it, Miami was the last of like the 1 day events that they're doing. So it was definitely a little bit chaotic because it was crammed into one, at least I think so. Um, it was crammed into like 1 day of fitness, but it was awesome. And yeah, I had to run longer because of the floor. So like not every floor is the same. And I've only
yeah,
ever done one, so I'm sure you guys can speak to this a little bit better. But so I had to run double the distance that I did in Chicago. So going into Chicago, knowing that the distance was hopefully going to be a little bit more accurate because we had the adaptive sport team there. Um, that was reassuring just because, you can only go up from there. It was basically like an automatic PR, right? Because
yeah,
my distance was appropriate. But Miami was great. Like, there wasn't as many down and backs, so there wasn't as many turns. So the farmer's carry was, I think, like two lengths. Like, everything was a little bit more comfortable, I would say, for the stations where like when I have to pivot and like turn, that can create some challenges. But they were both great. But yeah, Miami's where I qualified.
Cool. And then how long you obviously you had a stint to when was Miami? What date was that March?
Um, yeah, I think it
Yeah,
was.
like round about March, wasn't it? So then you had until June to put in like a good block. But I mean, we've spoken to a few adaptive athletes, and we know like you had to wait a bit to find out who would qualify because you didn't know who was coming through, and it wasn't as set as just getting an email at the end to say you've qualified for Worlds, and then you can plan, was it? Or
Yeah, so we had about 2 to 3 weeks.
okay,
In between getting the email and Worlds. So it wasn't a lot of time to book a trip. And especially, I was only one of two Americans. So like all of that travel
amazing.
with that little time was shocking.
Yeah.
But I
Mm,
get it. It's new. They had a lot of work. Like there was no leaderboard either, so we none of us knew if we did or not. We were kind of in the dark. I think they'll improve that for sure just to create a little bit more visibility for people, just better planning, because it's expensive. The closer you get to the date, all the
yeah.
prices just skyrocket. But yeah, there was a waiting game. I didn't go into it with any intention of qualifying for Worlds. I was happy just doing one. But obviously, as soon as I got my email, I jumped at the opportunity. So I didn't even have to think about it. I was like, sure, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, love that. And do you think like you say, the kind of the sport's evolving? I mean, like the adaptive division will hopefully keep growing and they'll keep making improvements and putting the energy and focus towards it to make it, listening to the athletes, I hope, to get the feedback. And is it a sport, Hyrox, that you can see yourself like staying in for a little while and doing a few more races, or are you, I don't know, do you like to try different things? Are you one of these people that's kind of like, okay, tick that box, on to the next, or how do you feel about it?
Yeah, no, I definitely want to be involved, whether I can be an advocate or an athlete. I'd open the door to both of those opportunities. I can't, it's going to grow, so there's going to be more competition. And the fact that I can't run does create a little bit of a disadvantage as far as qualifying in the future. So I think just understanding that and knowing that, CrossFit is my first love, so to speak. And so to be honest with you, I didn't change my training. I trained for Hyrox by, you guys might hate this, but I trained for
No,
Hyrox
no.
by training CrossFit. And I said to myself, I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to, maybe instead of X movement, I'm doing um, burpee broad jumps or I'm doing farmer's carry or wall balls. So a little bit more intentional swap of movements on a given day. But just knowing that training running isn't going to happen. So I didn't change much. So I think, anyway, to answer your question, I want to be involved in whatever way presents itself. I don't know what the future looks like, but at the very least, I want to help the team make this better. I think I care more about that than my own competitive endeavors. But yeah, I would say yes if a world's opportunity came again. I mean, especially where is it? Sweden next year? That would be
Yeah,
super cool.
Stockholm.
Um, and so we'll see what happens. But no, no, I don't jump to a lot of things. I think it's CrossFit and then Hyrox just plays really well with that. And I've always loved a good long workout, which I don't get a lot in CrossFit. So this was a good opportunity to flex that. So we'll see.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely love that.
Yeah, it's cool,
uh,
isn't it? And then did you how did you find like Worlds as a whole experience? And I was going to ask you, you have a guide runner with you. Is that your husband?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I thought was it cool to share it with him as well? Did he enjoy the whole experience?
I think he did. Yeah. He's very stoic and like very focused, like looking at my paces, telling me like when my competition, like in a friendly way,
Yeah.
like, oh, you're gonna catch her, or like, just those little
Yeah.
things that like kind of create like a cool dynamic for us. Because he's seen me through all of the mental hurdles,
Mm,
the comparison, all the things I talked about earlier. So I think for him, it was just really rewarding to finally see me like enjoy it. I do get really stressed in the lead up of it, and he can see that, but being able to prove to him too, like, hey, I have grown and like I want to jump back into this and like I can do this in a way that's healthy. I think that that was very rewarding for him. And yeah, just being out there with me and being able to like give me a few tips or just like little nuggets of inspiration along the way as we got further into it. I think he texted his coaches group because he's one of the head coaches at our CrossFit gym and was like, well, Sid did her first Hyrox and I walked my first Hyrox. So yeah, no, but it was cool to share both in Miami and Chicago.
Oh, cool.
Having him there with me, you know, in case I tripped. That was the primary reason. Just
Mm.
like I went into it wanting to run more than I realistically could. So that was primarily why he was there in case I fell.
Yeah, no, that's also, it's just really nice that you can share it with him. I think like and he's a coach as well, and he understands. Obviously, you've got somebody that's like performance driven, and it's probably quite nice to have someone that knows you inside out and also is a coach to be the
Yeah.
person that's there next to you. I mean, it sounds like, I mean, Lauren Weeks has her husband on the side, and he's like super supportive and shouts out stats to most of the athletes, doesn't he? And it's like you've got your own little Anthony there with you, like
Yeah. Yeah,
power couple.
I watched the Buttery Bros documentary and I saw her husband and I was like, oh, that's us. Like
Yeah,
on a
literally.
much smaller scale, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that. Can we maybe touch on nutrition a little bit and pick your
Sure.
brains and
Yeah,
dive into that side of things? Because
absolutely.
you're a nutrition coach and I'm sure have so much wisdom and knowledge to share with all our listeners. Where yeah, I'll let you maybe, I don't know, top 3
Yeah.
tips for hybrid like female specifically hybrid athletes, if you've got anything you could share with us.
Yeah, I'll try not to ramble, but essentially, when I started my competitive CrossFit career, for lack of a better word, I found a coach and then I became really inspired to want to do this and right now I have a corporate job that kind of pays my bills, but I launched my nutrition business, Ever Adapt Nutrition, in January of this year officially.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and one thing that I have kind of pursued within the space is seeking knowledge around hormones and metabolism. And so I'm enrolled in a 16-week course all about, you know, metabolism and hormones and biofeedback. And so becoming less macro focused and more, you know, whole body and like really diving into my biofeedback with my clients. So what are we seeing in terms of energy, sleep, hunger, digestion is a big one, stress. And so I think in the beginning of my journey, I was very much like kind of the macro coach, which is a lot of what you see and think of when you think nutrition
Mm.
coach. But now I'm really diving into the more holistic, kind of functional, whole body, you know, mind, all of that. And so macros has really become, while it is part of it, it's a smaller piece of like the overall picture. And so I'm in the trenches of this course. You know, we do 2 hours of video calls a week plus my 4 hours of weekly education. And then I have the opportunity to do like a mastery program once I've graduated in the fall to kind of keep me enrolled in the program, but it's a little bit more next level education after that, excuse me. And so I've just become really passionate about diving deeper into this, especially with women. You know, we have cyclical bodies, and so that's really important when it comes to training. A lot of us have maybe underlying, especially within the adaptive community, underlying autoimmune conditions that we need to consider. And so that cookie cutter kind of macro scenario doesn't always produce the results we want for everybody. And so you see a lot of coaches, while they have the best of intentions, telling you to eat fiber, telling you to drink water. You know, if you have an autoimmune condition that may be susceptible to gut issues, those standard recommendations might actually do more harm than good. I mean, we all need to drink water, right? But like excess fiber, all of those things, you know, not looking at insoluble, soluble fiber. Like I won't get into all of the things, but I think it's just important to remember like all of our bodies are different. How we react to training and stress is very different. So kind of modulating our training a little bit better, creating an environment where we are supporting our circadian health, all of those things. I'm just really passionate about, you know, becoming a better coach. And I'm still learning, but I think that's important to recognize in myself. Like I don't have all the answers, but I'm always going to seek the education to just be better and be able to help people with a wider variety of issues that they're experiencing. And I think that's what's going to give me, I'm struggling right now because it's like I don't have a large following and but I'm despite not having a large following, I have a good handful of clients for this being a part-time gig. So people are still finding me, and I think I'll get there. Again, it's one of those things where you kind of have to like, similar to my adoptive experience with competing, like I can't compare, somebody who has, I feel late to the party often. But I think it's coming at the right time. And I'm excited to reach more people. And no, I appreciate the opportunity to even talk about it here because any exposure that I can get is always helpful. And I think we're all of us here are just really passionate about helping women, find our superpowers, and excel in sport. And nutrition plays a big part of that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think we feel so strongly about like focusing on nutrition and not just following the whole, oh, I have these macros and I eat these calories, and we're just so much more complex, especially females, so much more complex than that. And it's great to hear like one that you're like enthusiastic about it and passionate about it, because I think that'll take you a long way. I think if someone's passionate about something, I'd rather work with somebody that has an interest and wants to further better themselves by finding out more and educating themselves more to help more people. So I don't think you're late to the party at all. I think actually, if anything, females are just starting to realize that maybe the standard advice that we've been following for years, that's just been coming out of gyms, which are like hugely male dominant and have been for years. Now females are starting to get into their strength training, get into, the hybrid type training, and maybe think about fueling slightly different, finding a bit more about their hormones, or starting to like pay attention to their cycle and how they might feel. It
Right.
all ties in, and I think you're coming in at the absolute perfect time, because I feel like this year, maybe the last couple of years, it's just started to get to be highlighted, and people are just starting to pay maybe a little bit more attention to that, and energy deficiencies, and just making sure they fuel for performance, I guess. Do
Yeah.
you have like any tips around like for females specifically around maybe like fueling for training or racing, or fueling for recovery after, that might be some things that they might need to take into account, rather than just looking at, protein after for recovery, and like carbs to, anything a bit more like specific that maybe they might not have heard, or that you thought's been really interesting so far?
Yeah, I mean, so I can speak from my experience just with
Yeah.
traveling to Chicago. It's often not until a couple days later that I really feel the impact of what I did, and I start to really crash. And I think traveling when you don't have a lot of like sponsors or resources for like nutrition, because I've seen people in the CrossFit space, they literally get like their prepackaged meals delivered to their hotel. And the fact that we have to travel, and I get travel constipation, not to be gross, but like
Mm.
there's all these things that happen as a result of travel. There's just that heightened stress, that heightened anxiety, and then, not knowing if I'm going to have access to the right foods, and I can't get it perfect. And I think, just making sure that I'm not stressing so much at the fact that I can't get my carbs right where I want them, or protein is going to be a little bit harder to hit. I had to like let go of that a little bit more just to like be able to execute on the thing, because nutrition is important, but if you stress yourself out so much, the detriment of that is probably worse than maybe being a little bit underfueled on the day. And I learn a little bit more every time about how I could have done it better, whether it's bringing a little bit more protein powder or doing a little bit more research on, I think I found like a sweet green near my hotel where I can control like the morning of like a little bit more of what I'm putting into the food. And so doing a little bit of research before you get there for like what restaurants are near you, or maybe finding a little bit of finding a local grocery store, or opting for an Airbnb that has, a kitchen or something like that. It's not always going to be perfect, but I think too, especially for adaptive athletes, I think there's so much that goes into just the pre-preparation and like getting to the day, that by the time you have actually done, you're doing the thing, you've exhausted so much of your just resources mentally. And I think this goes for everybody too, that we don't necessarily realize what's happened again until like 3 or 4 days later. I think I posted a story about this, but I slept
Yeah.
14 hours like when I got home, just like 3 consecutive days in a row, just because of, I think if anything, like the venue was so big. There were so many people. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. And so, like, there's just a lot more beyond just executing on the day that impacts us, I think, more than we realize. So, just being able to fuel for that. I'm going to admit, I skipped the 7 a.m. walkthrough on the course because I was like, I'm going to sleep instead. And like, I've done this before. I feel like it's going to be well marked and I'm going to have the same judge with me the whole time. I don't know if that was, I think that's different than everybody else, but we had the same judge following us on the course. And so I was like, I think it's going to be okay. I think I can handle it. I'm going to choose to sleep. So like making those decisions too. Um, but yeah, I mean, carbs are important, protein is important, all of those things are important. But if you let the stress get to you about not doing it perfectly, I think that can be more detrimental than, so just like give yourself a little bit of grace too. And I think, again, like the elites probably have it super dialed in, you can do a little bit more pre-preparation if you want to pay for it to make it perfect. But I think for me, each time I do it, I learn a little bit about better what I could do differently, just
Yeah.
snacks, protein, hydration was a big one. I got that wrong in Miami, so I improved it this time to where I felt properly hydrated, properly rested. The adrenaline can really mess up your sleep, so just making sure you have a good wind down routine, that's really important. But also
Yeah.
just not changing anything too much. I think too that can bog people down. Like just because it is worlds, you don't necessarily have to just do a 360 of like you've already laid the foundation. So just don't tinker with what's not broken. You know what I mean?
Yeah, don't go wild and start,
Yeah.
taking on all these like gels and supplements because you think, oh, I'm going to Worlds, and yeah,
Yeah.
change
Like,
some crazy stuff.
and then if you feel like you didn't quite do it right or you could do it better next time, like you find a resource to help you, whether that's me or, somebody else. But I think especially in the adaptive world, I've just noticed people don't fuel adequately, and I'm just hoping to be able to reach more adaptive athletes to be able to help them a little bit better, especially just when it comes to managing. We expend a lot of energy just getting around. So when you throw competition into the mix, I mean, when I'm walking, just from my gait, my heart rate is 114 on average. So my body's going through a lot just to get around. And so saving my energy, Ubering more in a city. And again, like, yeah, I didn't go to the 7 a.m. thing because it was going to just be more walking. And figuring out too, like, I think the first day, our Uber dropped us off way at the front end of the pier, and I didn't realize that there was a garage that the Ubers could go to. So just like little tips like that, to where if you can do a little bit of research to kind of take a little bit of the stress off your body. Not that we can't do it, but I just want to savor what I have available for the day. Does that make sense? Just because I'm already burning through a lot of resources, which makes carbs even more important for adaptive athletes too. We're already operating sometimes in a little bit of a deficit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's like really important. And I think like, I mean, following like doing the podcast with Dr. Stacey Sims, I think she said like female athletes in general, I think it was about 50% of female athletes aren't adequately fueled, like, which is just wild to think like that that's a stat. And then like you say, throw on top of that adaptive athletes that are using more energy to do like the daily tasks or like to get to the venue or even just in the prep of the race, like it's crazy like how much it can take on your body and how many calories you can burn without even realizing. So I think it's a really important message to get across. And hopefully anyone listening and they feel like they need to find out a little bit more about it or want to ask you some questions, they can like get in touch and know that you're passionate about like kind of delving into it and finding out more, because yeah, I think it's so interesting and so many people can improve their performance from focusing on that side of things. Everyone knows it's not just physical like fitness. It's all of it together. It's the recovery, the fueling, the training, that like it's a whole package. It's not just one aspect. So it's really important. And you touched on, I think we put a post out just after Worlds actually, because we had some downtime and really like tried to switch off, take a break from training for like a couple of weeks after, because we just done such a big block in the build up to Worlds. And we spoke a little bit over messages, but like, how has your recovery been post Worlds? Because you've said you slept for 14 hours for multiple days. Do you feel like your body's recovered well from it? You just had to kind of take some chill time, like mentally and physically? Any niggles or anything that you've had since, or hopefully touch wood, everything's good?
Yeah, everything's good. I didn't feel physically beat up. And it was really just like the mental toll of like I didn't have a long I think it was a culmination of like we didn't have a lot of lead up time. So it was like hurry up and book this thing and we're gonna go and and then it being new for us, so that just a lot of uncertainty around execution. So there was just a lot of mental stimulation, and I think that's where I see it the most. And that's been pretty consistent with CrossFit too. I think with CrossFit, I definitely can get a little bit more sore just because competing is usually a multi-day thing, whereas Hyrox is one day. So while it is longer though, so there's that. But I think if anything, my brain just needs a lot of rest. I felt good. I felt like I wanted to be in the gym moving my body, but my mind just wasn't in it. And I've learned over the years, just don't put your pressure on yourself to like go to the gym. It's gonna be there. You just take the time and be a couch potato if you need to be. Like there's no judgment. We do so much just on the regular trying to stay active. So I think we could all probably feel a little guilty sometimes when we just take that time to be lazy, but I think it's important just to have a few days a week. I think I took a week off, maybe one class sprinkled in there because there were some pull-ups that day. If there was one movement I could add to Hyrox, that would be the one.
That's the one. Yeah. I think it would be really interesting. It would change the game if you added pull-ups in, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, just accept like giving yourself grace and taking that time but the body didn't feel too beat up, which was good. It was just the mind and the brain that needed some sleep.
Yeah. We were the same, weren't we? We just took a proper like emotionally as well. Like it's full on, isn't it? Like Hyrox race or any competition is like there's loads of people there, there's music, there's stuff, like you're just a bit like, wow, the travel, they're like you're in a new place, you're working everything out, you're trying to find everything, like everything's just, and then you get home and you're just like you just need like to decompress sometimes. And yeah, like you said, I think type A personalities and people that do these kind of races and competitions find it really hard to take a step back and not feel guilty for not doing something. But it's important to give your body and your nervous system a second to just
And it's
like
not uncommon to feel a little depressed afterwards, just because you have this build up. I think our build up wasn't as long just because we didn't really know.
yeah.
I definitely experienced that in the beginning of competing in CrossFit. Was like when it was all over, I got really down and I was like, what's wrong with me? And then I took a step back and I was like, well, there was all this training in the lead up and it was this thing on the calendar. It's a big deal, right? And so it's easy to feel like, oh, well, that's lost now or it's all over. And did I really remember what happened? Just because it is such a whirlwind. So making sure too that when you're in it, you're doing your best despite all of the overstimulation to really enjoy the moment because it's gonna go so quickly. And then you get hit with those blues and it's like, it gets better once you're back into the gym, but I think it's not uncommon to experience that a little bit of post-competition depression for about a week afterwards. I can't imagine what it's like for the Elite 15, like, yeah, but
yeah, no, it is true.
That's what sparked, like, that's what resonated with me with your post was like the blues, having a little bit of the blues afterwards and just taking that time to indulge and enjoy without guilt was a good reminder.
Yeah, I think it is really important, and maybe do some of the things that you haven't been able to do or that you've not prioritized because you've been so focused on this goal. I think like it's important to let yourself do that and have the the time. But I was going to ask if there was like an opportune time for or day of like a run of competition for the Hyrox adaptive athletes to be, like, when would you think? Because I think myself and Faye like came to watch on the Sunday night, and I think we both came away thinking, wow, like you guys have had to wait like all weekend. Like it's been a long run up. Like we actually raced on the Sunday morning, so we felt like we'd waited quite a while to race, and we were in the morning. So then like I think maybe it was like 4 or 5 o'clock that you guys set up. So I was just interested, like, to, not that like I've got any say over anything, but like I was just interested as to when you would think like could be potentially in coming years a good time for the adaptive like athlete event, like to be, if there was a, for example, world championships, if there was a few days of competing.
Yeah, so again, this is kind of new to me, so I'm not totally up to speed on like how Hyrox typically runs things, but this is a good point and something I did want to touch on, so I'm glad you brought it up. I think what I struggled with, and there's conflicting feelings, right? And I did a post about kind of my conflicting feelings around all of it because we're grateful for the opportunity, but also a Sunday night, everybody's gone home. And so it's like if you truly want to showcase adaptive athletes as athletes, don't put us on Sunday at 4:30. And I get that they had prior obligations and there were scheduling conflicts and all of this was very last minute. But if we truly we just want to be seen as athletes. We don't want to be seen as inspirations. And like don't get me wrong, if somebody sees me, if somebody who is like overweight, unhealthy, sees me working out and is like, "Oh, she can do it, I can do it too." Like that's how I want to be seen as an inspiration. But like I think there can be, it's a little bit of discouraging sometimes because it's like, are we just inspirational stories and not really athletes to these people? And if they saw us as athletes and they were truly, truly most excited about the adaptive divisions at Hyrox, why are we last and why are we having to wait all this time? There's nobody in the stands at that point. And it would be awesome if we could have even one opportunity to be smack dab in the middle on a Saturday afternoon where everybody's there and the venue's like totally buzzing and like everybody's just having a great time. And now I get it, you can't put us in the mix with everybody else because that creates logistical nightmares when you have people in wheelchairs, and things like that. So there's definitely just like safety concerns for other people, but there's ways to make it work if you really want to, and there's enough lead time now to make a change. So I'd be curious because I think a lot of times we're just used to the stands being empty, um, and just kind of just showing up and being in our own little world. And I think kind of going back to an earlier point in our conversation, that's what I really loved about Miami was like I was in the mix with the open women, so the stadium wasn't empty. And I was getting cheers from people and applause from people who wouldn't have been there had it just been adaptive. And I think that's part of why what I took away from Miami that I didn't get in Chicago was just that like that camaraderie amongst the people and people seeing me out there and maybe somebody decided to try Hyrox who went to spectate because they saw me. Who knows? You know?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think like both of us did. We went to watch, and even the fact we were like they changed the relays, which were on the last day last year at the World Champs in Nice, the country relays. But this time they, for some reason, put them on the Friday night. And I know a lot of people were questioning why they put them in the middle of the weekend. If they put them at the end of the weekend to close off the weekend again, the like everything would have been buzzing the whole way through because everyone's building up to watching the elites again on the Sunday night and I just felt like, yeah, not that if you're going to do it, I think you should do it right. And I think you guys deserved to have the Adaptive Invitational was this new thing that's going to be in Hyrox, and it deserved to have a show in the middle of the 4 days, I thought, rather than the end. And it makes a
Yeah.
difference. We've raced early in the morning in a Hyrox race when there's been no one in the stadium because it's so early, because we've gone off at like the first wave at like 7 a.m. or whatever we did, and there's no one there. And then you race later in the day at like 2 p.m. at a different event, and it's buzzing, and it makes a difference when you compete. Like you're saying, Miami versus like people cheering versus people not being at the around in the crowds, and the crowds is part of what makes Hyrox. I think a lot of people say that that's the community spirit, and that's the thing that makes Hyrox. So to keep that in the and especially in the World Champs, to keep that vibe, and that's what Hyrox is so known for. I think the programming could definitely improve for everybody as well, like for other people that raced. There was the men's like 70, like over 70s category. We watched those two guys, the older guys, and they were like killing it, these two like 70-year-old guys, and like they were enjoying it, but like no one was there to see them. Like either that wasn't as busy, and I'm like, why do we not have the big crowds for that? Because the crowds is what makes Hyrox. The crowds is what people feed off and buzz off, and like you're saying, the high fives and stuff, it's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
You've
and
got
you
to the
can do
World Champs.
Hyrox at your own gym if you want to. If
Yeah.
you so it's a missed opportunity for sure. And
Mm.
yeah, it's a bummer when the Worlds isn't as great from that
Yeah.
in regard to the Miami event that I had, especially when you put Worlds on the table, you have a certain vision or certain expectations. But I also kind of knew, like from an adaptive athlete, just experience with overall competition, that this was likely to happen, and especially so when we found out our time of day. So again, just it makes it all the more important to just like manage your stress too, because if you are like on the tail end of a Sunday and you have all this room
Yeah.
that
Like,
morning to ruminate and think and just be so nervous, you got to find ways to decompress and manage your stress around that. But I hope they consider that and take some feedback, because I think this community is pretty powerful, and we have a lot to showcase. And I think the people like you guys who have shown up and seen it for yourselves can see that. And so I hope that, they take our feedback into consideration in the future.
Did
yeah,
you
I
did you get
100%. I
chance
mean,
to feedback? Sorry, did you
Um,
get chance? Did they like give you? It was an open forum to be able to feedback to
I
Hyrox?
haven't heard anything. So it's funny because like it's a little different with Hyrox being just like a one go. Like with CrossFit competitions, you have multiple days. So you're like meeting people and talking a little bit more. You find opportunities to share tidbits of information. So I do struggle with this with Hyrox a little bit. Like especially our briefing was at 2:30. Everybody's tense. Like that's not really the time to like network and chat, but I really missed that. And I hope that I probably just need to find them. Like I hung out in the vendor area a little bit, hoping to find other people to kind of connect with. But with the venue being so big, it was a little bit harder to kind of navigate and find people who I could chat with or share feedback with, or even just finding other adaptive athletes to meet. So I missed out on a lot of networking opportunities. I just think from the pure format of it. So I hope I don't know, I think maybe we might just have to create them for ourselves. But that's something I just noticed. Like, yeah, with CrossFit being a couple days, like you're naturally just gonna have more time to like
Mm.
chat with other people, share your perspective. I haven't seen any sort of survey go out or anything. So if I don't see anything, formally, I'll definitely reach out to our contact person for the adaptive divisions and just say, hey, like, is there any board or like any opportunity for me to help or
hmm.
provide some input? Because I have tried to not look at this so much from my own personal competitive lens and more as a broader opportunity. So I think that's where I've changed a lot. So I'll seek that out if I am not sure, but I haven't seen anything yet, but I won't wait around for it. I will figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think it's a really, I wanted to raise the point because we both thought it when we came away on Sunday night, and I think like there would be so much more benefit for the adaptive community and for the rest of the Hyrox community at putting you guys, like you say, like smack bang in the middle of the weekend or at the start of the weekend, because everyone's turning up to register. Like before it all kicks off. So people are around, things are going on. Like I know there is obviously the safety bit in that they have to bear in mind, and but I definitely think there's ways forward, and that putting it last, like from even just our experience, like having to wait the whole weekend, and like the energy that you guys are expending to then be able to, like if it was first, then or like on the first or second day, then maybe there would be more opportunities for you guys to connect, because once your race is done, you might spend a bit more time in the venue, because you wouldn't be so worried that you're like tiring yourselves out and getting mentally exhausted because you're going to race the next day. Because that's like how we think, you know, we don't want to spend all of our time in the venue in the run up, because we don't want to be absolutely exhausted like when we race on the Sunday. And for you, it's probably that times like 100, you know. So I just think that, yeah, there's definitely something they can do going forward. And if we can help in any way, we will, because like I think it's really important that you guys are seen as athletes for people in the Hyrox community, and to get other adaptive athletes involved as well, because I think they're doing a great thing by like having the division. But yeah, it could definitely be improved on for sure.
Yeah, they've checked the box now. Let's elevate the experience.
Yeah,
For the
100%.
athletes. And I think too, like, even just like morning chalk up wasn't around any longer, like those kind of, news outlets, or, and just potential companies who might be able to, I use the word sponsor or partnerships. There's opportunities that are lost for athletes who have to pay a lot and don't have, brands kind of behind them in order to. So like just not having the eyes on, I think, is a missed opportunity for us too. Like there's plenty of possible partnerships for me within my ties of nutrition and fitness as a passion, that I think I go to these with like such a drive for networking, and I always come up short, and I'm just like, why does this keep happening? Like, do people not care? Do they not want adaptive athletes? Are we too complicated? Like, is it just that they don't understand our stories? So I think just more visibility would really help a lot of us be able to do this, and not have it be such a burden, whether financially or just create more opportunities too.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And it was really cool to see Lauren Stedman, like athlete, like compete as well. She was competing in the upper limb category,
Oh yeah.
limb impairment category, and she's got a great, we had a chat with her at the end, and she's got a great following, and obviously has done a lot, like an elite athlete. And just to get people, you need to bring more adaptive athletes in like that to raise the profile, and she'll definitely help to raise the profile of adaptive athletes, like the adaptive category in Hyrox. And just hopefully it keeps spreading, because you just want people to find out about it, to get more people to take part, don't you? And just build the community.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you're doing a really, really great job yourself. And I think, yeah, like you say, just being the change that you want to see, and like being so proactive to be out there and maybe change things for like the girls and guys coming through in the future. I probably leads on to your question pretty well then.
Yeah, it does. I was going to finish up with the final question for you, which would be, what message or advice would you give to your younger self, or the next generation of girls coming up? Is there anything either in sport, in life, for adaptive athletes, anything that you would say, or to your younger self?
Yeah, so I think just recognizing, especially growing up in an era where inclusion and adapting wasn't really a thing, took, it knocked my confidence so much. And I won't go as far as to say like I have trauma from it, but like I got bullied a lot in school, and, in gym class, like nobody knew how to adapt or change things or be inclusive. So I joined sports, and I just sat on the sideline as a cheerleader. And so I missed out on just a lot of opportunities to understand what it meant and what it felt like to be part of a team. And I started pursuing going to the gym on my own in high school, if you can imagine, where everybody else is playing sports. I was going off to a Globo gym just to be able to stay healthy and like take matters into my own hands, because in that time, people didn't know in the school systems how to include me. And so I think recognizing, okay, my body isn't less than, it's just different. And like people don't really understand what you're capable of like right now, but that's their limitation. It's not your limitation. And so like every adaptation you make, every opportunity where you find a creative solution to a problem and where you refuse to give up, like you're building like an unshakable foundation of resilience. And I think that is super important to build confidence in the gym. I think if anything I've learned in the last year, I get a lot out of the physical aspects of training, don't get me wrong. But to me, just the mental resilience that's built within those four walls is far more rewarding than anything else. And I think like you've got to find that fire, like whatever it is that you love and what, inspires you, and just chase that relentlessly. And I think these opportunities within whether it's Hyrox or CrossFit, like I've had a really fun time, and there have been trials and tribulations and tests with my mental strength. But at the end of the day, like it's even if it took me a little longer to get here, I would have rather have gone through all of that and come to this point rather than not had these opportunities at all. And I'm like willing to continue to chase that no matter what, whether it's I'm an athlete in it and competing, or I choose to make it better for the next generation. So I hope that I can, leave a impression here in some way, whether it's as an athlete or as an advocate. So yeah, that's pretty much what I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean,
It's pretty
bloody good
powerful.
answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Like you cannot argue with that. And I think, yeah, your advice and the way you've spoken today, I think is incredible and really empowering. And I think it will have helped a lot of people out there. And I think you're like, yeah, you're a great person to get on the show and for us to be able to shout about, because like you're one hell of a strong female athlete. So
Yeah.
we are like delighted to chat to you today, and we're going to keep following your journey. We're hopefully going to be able to bump into you at a race in the future and say hi in person. I mean, we did scream at you, but I think you were locked in your zone. So probably like, who are these two girls? But no, where can everyone else listening, if they've enjoyed this and they want to follow your journey, see how you get on, like in CrossFit, Hyrox, nutrition, everything, where can people go?
Yeah, so just head to Instagram. My handle is Sydney_Peterson, and I kind of weave my training and my nutrition into my one single account. So if you want to follow for some fitness inspiration, or you want to chat to me about any sort of, gut hormone, nutrition issues, whether you turn into a client or not, I am always happy to talk to anybody and kind of troubleshoot and help and leave a mark in that way. I'd rather help with nutrition more so than pursue competition for myself. So I hope somebody out there listening today feels inspired and like they could maybe do a little bit more optimization on their health and nutrition. So don't hesitate to reach out. Like there's no pressure to become a client. I just want to help. So yeah, Sydney_Peterson is my Instagram handle.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And we will link everything in the show notes so you'll be able to find Sydney. But yeah, we really appreciate your time. We think you're doing a great job advocating for the adaptive community. And yeah, I'm excited to see like where it goes. And I hope that Hyrox can kind of like keep improving it and take you guys' feedback on board. And hopefully, yeah, we will see you at a Hyrox race soon. So thank you very much.
I look forward to it. Thank you guys.
And thank you everyone listening. We will see you next week.